Joshua 6:24 then tells us that the Israelites burned the whole city and everything in it. To understand what a burned city would look like in a tell, let's return for a moment to our cake analogy. This chocolate layer represents a city that was destroyed by fire. Ooh! A burned layer stands out from the other layers of a cake, just as a burned city stands out when a tell is excavated. Now, just as we can remove a slice from a cake to expose the inner structure of the cake, the same thing is true for a tell. As this trench was dug, this burn layer that you see right here was exposed.
When Kathleen Kenyon came in the 1950s, she opened up actually 5 squares in this area to kind of check Garstang's findings to see if she came up with the same results he found, because he found evidence for a massive destruction by fire. And he, of course, equated that to the biblical account, because the Bible says the Israelites charged up into the city and then they set it on fire. So she opened up these squares, and she found exactly the same sequence that Garstang had found. Vast destruction layer, about 3 feet thick of destruction debris, ash, collapsed roof timbers, and all kinds of things.
Now in this burn layer, both Garstang and Kenyon found room after room of large storage jars that were full of grain, and all of it was burned.
Domestic structures had been violently destroyed. There were storage jars full of grain that had all been burnt.
Yes, the burnt wheat found there at Jericho is very important because it ties in with our biblical story.
Joshua 3:15 tells us that when the Israelites crossed the Jordan, it was at flood stage because it was during harvest time. And we see in Joshua 5:10 that after crossing the Jordan River, the Israelites celebrated the Passover.
It tells us in the Bible, when the Israelites crossed the Jordan River, it was at flood stage because it was harvest time. Well, in the southern Jordan Valley, harvest time is in the spring of the year.
Would you agree with some of Wood's arguments as far as the wheat that was found there, that it at least tells us some basic information as far as what time of year the city was destroyed?
Yes, his assumptions, I think, are reasonable. Those containers, those pots were full of grain. Therefore, they must have been filled fairly soon after the harvest.
We know that the Israelites came into the land and attacked Jericho in the spring of the year after Passover. And that's the same time of year as it is right now in Israel. All over Israel they're celebrating Passover, and the people are bringing the wheat harvest in from the fields. And so we know both agriculturally and archaeologically that Jericho was attacked after the wheat harvest had been taken in.
Now this is a very unusual find because grain was valuable. Why would you leave it to be burned up?
Joshua 6:18 tells us that while destroying Jericho, the Israelites were commanded to keep away from the devoted things.
Just the very fact that the grain was left to be destroyed in the fire tells us also that the Israelites obeyed God's command not to plunder the city. They're simply to offer up Jericho as an offering to the Lord as the first fruits of the promised land.
The basic sequence of events found in the Bible describing Jericho matched the layer sequence the archaeologists found in the tell.
And in fact, Kathleen Kenyon introduced what we call the stratigraphic method of excavation here at Jericho, where you just peel down the layers, layer by layer, and you, in particular, analyze the vertical sides of the trench or the square that you're digging, and you draw it, you photograph it, because in the vertical trench you have a sequence of the events that have taken place as they're preserved in the earth layers. And she said the evidence here shows that the walls collapsed first, the earthquake happened first, and then the fire happened. That's exactly what the Bible says. The walls came down as the Israelites were marching around that seventh day. They went up into the city, then they set it on fire. Earthquake, fire. And she said, that's the sequence I have found here.
In Joshua 6:26, Joshua said, "Cursed before the Lord is the man who undertakes to rebuild this city Jericho."
On top of that destruction was this erosional layer.
After the destruction, you get material rolling down the hillside.
And we can account that to the fact that the city was abandoned for some period of time. And
then a period when Jericho was not settled. It was abandoned, it was deserted.
If you recall in the biblical story, Joshua pronounced a curse on Jericho. On anybody that would rebuild a city, there would be a curse on that person.
The ancient text tells us that the walls collapsed, that the city was burned and afterwards laid abandoned. When archaeologists dug at Jericho, they found that the wall had collapsed. The city had been burned, and it had lain abandoned for quite some time.
That's the sequence in the Bible. That's the sequence Kathleen Kenyon discovered in her excavations.